possible, theoretically, that it's not. How do you like that? How do you like that matchup for Niv?
I think it's probably fine. I don't think there's anything that is jumping out to me as too worrisome for them to deal with. I think it really just depends on the hands that the Mono Blue Spirits deck would have access to and whether a spell's going to resolve, honestly. If John has, a 4-mana or 5-mana spell resolve in by turn 5 or so, that he's probably quite favored in the game. And if not, then I think we'll see Ian be more favored.
How do you feel about the Niflite matchup against them on a Moldify?
Yeah, probably a lot harder to counter all of your opponent's spells when you are down 2 cards and your opponent is up 2 cards.
Yeah. Deck lister just in. Quick review. It looks like it's actually blue-white spirits. We have some white sources in the form of a Darkar Waste, Glacial Fortress, Hallowed Fountain, Hengegate Pathway. And we're playing those white sources to get access to Spellcaller.
And this is one of the things that Dominaria United added to our format is we are almost finished with our cycle of Pain lands. We're almost there. We got the blue-white one and the green-red one as our additions, correct?
And the black-red one.
And the black-red one, right.
We're missing Underground River and Brushland.
So, and this is one of the options that like really opened up. Well, these blue-white decks, I've also seen players messing around with like blue-white heroic and things like that.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Ian's off to a pretty good start here. He had the turn 1 Spectral Sailor into Curious Obsession. So, I mean, this is the hand that's going to crawl you out of the mulligan. I mean, if this Sailor is going to stick for the whole game, like that's what we're looking for. And John looks like he let him on try him on turn 1. The card John wants right here is Abrupt Decay, if he has it. If otherwise, he's going to have another removal spell. But it looks like it doesn't matter because Ian doesn't have the counter spell, and that might just be the game by itself, right there. I think that like, unless John runs a 3-drop into a spell queller here, I don't really see how our Spirit's player can get out of it. Looks like he's holding Queller, a 4th land, and another Obsession. So if John does play something like Fable here, getting that stuck under there, it looks like he's going to go with a Deathrite Shaman. And I think you just got to pull the trigger here. I mean,
yep. Any spell that John's casting, I want under my spell.
If he has a removal spell, I think you're not going to win this game anyway. So we just gotta take it and try to get our Obsession down.
Yep.
So a second Deathrite and another Triome.
And Ian has taken 1 point from his Adarkar Waste, and the John, I believe, shocked in a Watery Grave on turn 2,
as well as the 2 from the Curious Obsession hit at 16.
So there's that other Curious Obsession we mentioned on the Spell Queller coming in for 3.
And a 13, we're taking another draw step. Is it a counter spell? Looks like Hallowed Fountain was the draw. Another Adarkar Waste, and I think there's a Nebelgast Herald. So not exactly what we're looking for. Even just like Fable into Niv is probably going to be good enough to lock the game up here. Just the flying blocker is going to be really hard to get through for the rest of the game. Obviously, we have the Herald for this turn, but after that, it's going to be a little tough.
Ian's really hoping to draw some counter spells off the top here.
Or that John just needs one more turn to set up. Like if John has to take a turn off to play a Fable or like anything this turn to try to get going, like we still have a chance to close the game out from the Spirit side. It's exciting. I mean, like I didn't even think about this as an option, but like you've mentioned, the mana base opening up with the Pain lands. Obviously, we don't have Seachrome Coast, the lands we actually want to play for the
right.
But like the fact that previously, if you were going to play this deck, you probably needed to play like 3 to 4 mana confluences is a really big concession against the other aggressive decks. And so it's nice to see these strategies opening, especially like the pathway in this deck is really appealing because you have 1 white spell. So like playing it on the blue side most of the time is like fine. And then like when you need it to be your white source because you've drawn only other blue sources, you got your white source, which is cool. Looks like John did draw Fable, fetched into a Plains. And are we going to see a Bring to Light? Are we going to see a Niv? I assume we're casting a 5-drop. That's how we're starting our turn.
Right. With our Deathrite Shaman and Fable in the graveyard there.
And I know John's been a big fan of the Deathrite Shaman, Fabled Passage and Fable of the Mirrorbreaker as enablers. I think the theory he explained is if you tap it for mana 1 time, it's like great. And then in all these other matchups, it has all these other applications from the other two activated abilities that are like really good. And it's another card you can draw from Niv later to help you set up 2 spells to stabilize the board.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I have heard John talk about a lot is having a spread of the guild colors so that maybe it's less important that I draw, like you were saying, 5, 6, 7 cards off my Niv, but just making sure that I get 2 or 3 in my games is what's gonna pull me ahead after I've played my 5-mana 6/6 flyer.
yeah, so what 3-mana card do we play? Is
I
that a
believe that's Wandering
Mind. Okay,
Mhm.
Wandering Mind revealing a Leyline Binding, which I believe costs 1 at the moment.
I would agree,
So end of
probably.
step, we're gonna get a Nebelgast Herald. Here comes the Leyline Binding to kill the Spellcaller, to get to recast the other Deathrite, and have the Curious Obsession fall off. And the Wandering Mind's tapped, so we can get in for 2. But I think if we don't draw another Obsession here, it's gonna be pretty tough.
Mhm. And John's choosing to attack with his Wandering Mind there, so shows that he's not really afraid of.
I believe it got tapped by the Nebelgast Herald.
I see.
Yeah, that was Ian's plan of trying to try to
The
try to
stack
spend
being
it.
resolved.
So, in for 2 more, putting John down to 11. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's gonna be an uphill battle from here for Spirits.
Absolutely.
I do think in general though, I like the blue-white side of the matchup. I think Obsession lines up pretty well, and being able to try to get under them. This is unfortunate mulligan to 5, and the hand just didn't work out that way. I mean,
yeah.
If one of these lands had been a slip out the pack and that Sailor had lived, this would be a very different game.
Absolutely. And I think it's having that extra counterspell on the Spellcaller body is just allows you to have a much higher density of interaction with your spirit stack, as well as a higher density of creatures to be playing. And
yeah, so it looks like John bought his Yorion, put it in his hand, and passed the turn after playing us on Petal Grove. So I think that I'm trying to think about the sequence of cards that can get us out of this from the other side of the table. I guess you have to initiate the trade and then hope your Spectral Sailor gets you there, because we have a Mosley Wanderer and a Sailor. Maybe you want to shock the Fountain and so we could draw a card this turn, because I think your light total is not going to be most important thing. We do get the Sailor to tap down the Mind. Do get another 2 damage in, so we're down to 9.
I'd agree that I like drawing cards off my Sailor when I can. And
yeah, I think your life total is just not going to matter that much in the course of this game.
Yeah, especially when John doesn't have a really big attacker that's ending the game already in play.
Looks like we have 2 Deathrite activations, 1 for life gain and 1 for life drain. So it looks like our life total should be 11 to 17 here. Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty hard. This is the other spot where Deathrite's really good. You don't need the mana anymore, but now every time one of your spirits dies, that's just 2 more life for the Niv deck, and that's pretty hard to come out of for some of the more burn oriented strategies, because it just can't compete with that sort of efficiency. So maybe a little easier for Spirits if we can end up finding an obsession and start countering things, but it's one of the appeals to Deathrite. I think it's a card that's probably a little underplayed in total in the format. Obviously not as strong as it is in other formats where it's not legal.
Right. The joke is that it was a 1-mana planeswalker, and I think John's showing that pretty well here. And the importance, like you said, it's not as easy to facilitate in this format without fetch lands to have it be a mana dork, but
it looks like a Geistlight Stare on the Yorion coming down here.
No Blinking Wandering Mind today, but you just need to be able to facilitate your Deathrite Shaman with other cards like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, or maybe a new card like Elder Dragon War.
Sure, or even Fabled Passage. I mean, Fabled Passage, if you can make your deck work with Fabled Passage, it is reasonably powerful. It powers up the Delve spells, which people don't always think about. It powers up Deathrite Shaman, but looks like a top deck Mausoleum Wanderer to tap down the Wandering Mind again, in for another 3 damage to put this down to 8. And then John's gonna drain Ian down to 15 end of turn with a Deathrite Shaman. Get to draw a card of the Sailor this turn, so that's good. And this Mausoleum Wanderer is not super likely to counter anything, but it's another flyer. I mean, John hasn't shown us a sweeper yet, so presumably all these creatures are gonna have to get killed 1 for 1. And I will say it was actually really big that the Yorion got countered, not because of the Wandering Mind not getting flickered, but the 4/5 body is just impossible to get through.
Right. Yes. Does have flying, so
Yeah.
blocks all of the spirits.
Won many games with like many Yorion decks where you just put the 4/5 into play and they're like, oh, my attacks are bad now. And it makes the game very difficult.
Mhm.
So
Hear from our organizer out there that they are working on the glare on that we are noticing on some of John's cards. Just to clarify, the creatures in play, like we said, 2 Deathrite Shamans, a Wandering Mind. That's a Leyline Binding with a Spell Queller under it. And then a collection of lands that make more than 2 colors of mana.
yeah, some basics, but
True.
most importantly, I believe we have all the basic line types represented. That's going to be the important thing.
Yes, we did see the Leyline Binding get cast for 1 mana earlier this game.
So assuming John doesn't have a sweeper here and doesn't have a Bring to Light to get one, or it doesn't have an Invisit, what are we looking to draw? Like, we're just trying to find Fable to start sculpting our hand and get value out of Wandering Mind, I assume. I mean, because like currently there's only 1 creature left in my graveyard, and if Ian keeps drawing a spirit every turn, you're not going to be able to make blocks. And 8's not the most life. Like, we're getting pretty low here.
Yeah. So that counterspell on the Yorion might be quite pivotal in deciding this game.
Yeah. Another reason that kind of like shocking the Hallowed Fountain is it makes it, when you play it tapped, it makes it transparent that you have something to spend the mana on that's not this that you're planning on spending the mana on. So it hides that you actually have a spell more by shocking it in. Although again, it ends up not mattering because I don't think John had a choice other than playing the Yorion that turn. So
I'd agree.
All right, looks like we're going to attack with the Wandering Mind for 2. I mean, Deathrite Shaman can win races, so it's going to put Ian down to 15. And
That is a lot of mana being tapped.
I believe we're going to be exiling a lot of creatures with a.
Oh, yep. What's the backside? Deadly Vanity? I know the front side is Selfless Glyph Weaver.
Selfless Glyph Weaver.
Yeah. And
Modal double face card.
yes.
The main reason you're playing it is that you can Bring to Light for the front side and then cast the backside, and the backside is a powerful sweeper. Looks like Deadly Vanity. Yes, that is correct. So you choose a creature, and then you exile all of the other creatures.
So it looks like John chose to keep his Deathrite Shaman there.
Yeah.
And everything else has been exiled, and that's kind of the moment we were waiting for. It really seems like with John sweeping the board, it's going to be hard for Ian to claw back in.
Yeah. I mean, again, the upside for Ian here is John's life total is a little low, so it's only going to take a couple flash creatures, maybe a couple chip shots, and maybe you can close the game out. And obviously, we still haven't seen, the Yorion's gone, and we haven't found a visit yet. So it's far from over. But
no cast from Ian there during his turn, just a pass, and John will be gaining 2 life and cycling another Triumph.
Don't want those Savai Triumphs in play. I want those in our graveyard.
They make more colors of mana when they're there.
In your graveyard, I agree. Yeah.
Right,
So that's why Death Heart's so good.
And they've drawn you a card.
You can't argue with that. Double Water Your Grave. So unfortunate, but that still is 5 colors of mana for a Bring to Light. And this resolve is probably going to be the game. So it looks like Ian's saying that's okay, and I think we're going to go find a visit. And
I would agree.
Just the 6/6 body is going to be very hard to overcome, and we're likely to draw a couple cards here. So
how many turns does Ian have with a Niv-Mizzet connecting?
I have 15 on the graphic. We have 13, so it doesn't change the clock by itself, although the death rate might change the numbers. But I think if John draws 3 or more cards here, Ian might just pick all of his cards up. It looks like we got Deafening Clarion, Abrupt Decay, a Vanishing Verse, and we're not going to take that Deathrite Shaman because I think Abrupt Decay is probably better. So
yeah,
just a casual sweeper and 2 spot removal spells, one of which can't be countered.
And the sweeper will gain life with the Niv-Mizzet.
Oh yeah.
So it really is.
Yeah. Don't cut. A buddy of mine, this is a while ago, he was playing. Malira was still playable. He's playing against like Malira Company, and
day.
Thank you. Shout out to our local USPS employee coming to pick up the mail. Always polite. Anyway, it's like an intern spell caller for Ian, but their opponent cast a company at some point and they resolved it, and then they just cut their deck afterwards. Is very good, but
those are the fun judge calls. The ones where you can't quite explain what's happened. Judge, I have my hand has been shuffled into my library or something along those lines.
All right. End of turn, we're gonna eat another creature and gain another 2, up to 12. And trying to decide if we're gonna cast a Subrepticate or not. Probably just gonna wait because there's no reason to spend the mana now.
Mhm.
Also, put on my block. Also, might be the turn to cast a Clarion to gain 6 life. Who knows? It's hard to say.
Would that count as a 2-for-1?
You're killing her in Death Ray Shaman.
Oh, okay.
So it depends on how much
I
you
did
got your
forget
life.
about
It
that.
looks like another Bring to Light is on the stack currently for 5 colors of mana. I can't exactly see what Ian has, but I think if this one resolves too, it's probably Curtains.
And I would bet that this one would go and get the Tybalt that has a 7-mana Valky on the backside.
Yeah, let me look at the deck list and see if I can think of anything better. Because that's probably good enough, just killing the spell caller, being able to cast a spell caller from exile on the next spell. I mean, if the Clarion was still in the deck, we could get the Clarion.
That does look.
It does look like a Valky is going to get not put onto the stack. It's going to get put into exile, and then Tybalt's going to probably get put on the stack. Yeah, there he is. That resolves, and there's the trigger. That's important. You don't want to miss that one. But yeah, so now pretty sure the spell call is just going to get exiled, and then we're going to go to combat. Although it looks like we're going upstairs.
Yeah. So for those unfamiliar, Tybalt Cosmic Imposter, I believe, is the name of the backside of the card, and John ticked it up so that both players exiled the top card of their library. When this card enters play, John has an emblem that says that all of the cards exiled with it can now get cast. And then it also has a tick down to exile an artifact or creature. And then that card has been exiled with Tybalt and can then get cast. Yep.
Yeah. Looks like John elected the plus because he was worried about potentially a Spectral Sailor. It's like the only way to get out of the game. So he wanted to make sure he had removal for that. And he used his Vanishing Verse to clean that up. So he only got 1 card. Slip out the back to protect the Niv. It's going to be tough too. And got to play our land off the Tybalt. Also found a Temple Garden off top of our own deck. So yeah, so we're going to draw our card. And I think the door's getting pretty close. I'm trying to look at the deck list and think of a sequence of cards that can get us out of this, but I think that the Tybalt in play really solidifies it, because now John can just cast like any sweeper, and even if the Niv-Mizzet somehow dies, like the Tybalt's still gonna be in play. We'd have to find the like 1 Brazen Bar or the 1 Otawara to get it out of play, all before like a bunch of bad things happen to us. And there's a Bring to Light off the top, and I don't know if that's gonna get cast this turn or next turn, but
it's looking like John has an embarrassment of riches in this game. Just 5-6 cards in his hand, 3 cards in exile that are sort of in his hand.
And the third Bring to Light, that's the number. That's where we're finally gonna pack it in. I mean, like I said, like the game looks pretty over, but obviously, like John's life total got pretty low at one point. We have a lot of flash creatures, and he clearly didn't have the cards needed in his hand at in the middle of this game. So I think it's reasonable to keep playing.
And Ian, a great fight on a mulligan to 5 cards.
I mean, like we found a great 5-card hand. We got our first threat answered. We had a second threat. If any of his first 3 draws had been like a 1-mana counterspell, like if that Guy Slight Snare had been a turn, a draw step earlier, I think that like it's possible John would have lost this game. Like that's how close this game actually was, even though at the end, obviously, at the end of all the Nimbus games where they're just like 700 cards ahead of you and you have no, it looks like, how could I have ever won this game? But
right.
The actual tension is a little different. Looks like the players are going to sideboard. Let's talk about Ian's sideboard. He's got 2 Ether Gusts, a Fateful Absence, 1 March of Swirling Mist, 2 Mystical Dispute, 3 Portable Hole, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Skyclave Apparition, and 2 Witness Protection. What do you like in and out in this matchup for this blue-white deck?
Well, I love Mystical Dispute in the matchup for sure. Just lots of the cards happen to be lots of colors of mana, and blue is one of those colors. Bring to Light, Niv Mizzet, those are some really big ones. Urion, as we saw that get countered as it would have stopped up the game. So I like Mystical Dispute. Similarly, I like Aether Gus, just kind of being able to stop a Bring to Light for a turn. We brought up that that's kind of a couple of moments during that game, all that Ian needed. And so those are the cards that I really, really like. And I would maybe think about something like a March of Swirling Mist if I wanted to have some insurance against sweepers or something like that.
Sure, yeah. So I agree with them in general. The other thing about Gus specifically is that Abrupt Decay and Dread War, two of the removal spells in John's deck that you need to interact with, also get interacted with. And even if he's going to draw them again next turn, that's usually enough tempo for you to not care. But I would agree in general. And cards I'm not liking are probably like, I mean, I don't know. Like that's the hard part. It's like I guess Nebelgast Herald's probably the worst card in your deck because your opponent's not that likely to have flyers. You don't really want to think about the games with the resolving creatures. So I might cut those, and I might cut all the slip out the back. So just have March instead to give me a sweeper insurance card that also can be like a bad slip out the back when I need it to be a slip out the back. But it'll be interesting to see how Ian decides the sideboard. But overall, I mean, like I said, I like how the way the deck's constructed for the matchup, and I think it's probably one of his better matchups in the room. But over on John's side, we've got obviously the one you're in, but we also have 2 Thoughtseize, 3 Pithing Needle, 1 Extinction Event, 4 Mystical Dispute, a Lavinia, a Azorius Renegade, a Blood Baron of Viscopa, and 2 Camball Council of Allocation. I would imagine the disputes are going to come in.
Of course,
obviously. Right. Another reason why the disputes are good for the blue deck to bring in is that John is likely to have dispute in his sideboard.
True.
And being able to dispute the disputes is important to win these counter wars. Past that,
I think we probably want the extra sweeper.
We probably want the event. And then I don't know if John likes Thoughtseize in this matchup. There are a lot of counter spells to fight through, and it is one of his cheaper interactive cards. Although the life can sometimes be a little painful. It probably just, I mean, I haven't played enough of the deck to know what combination of cards he desires least. It's possible that Thoughtseize is better than some of those cards, but we'll have to see how he sideboards.
I would also not be surprised if we end up seeing John put a Campbell Console of Allocation in play from his sideboard. I know that he likes that in so many matchups, and I'm not even sure if he necessarily needs his opponent to be playing that many non-creature spells to be willing to board it in.
Well, we're off to the races here with another turn 1 Sailor into Obsession, but we're playing the Hallowed Fountain tap, which is
not a show of strength.
Not a show of strength. That's tough. Your hand has to be really good for that to be good.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that this Retro Sailor is going to get advantage for us. So John's going to be going down to 16 after that.
I would even, when I don't have anything,
I would still shock it.
Right. Yeah. And just represent.
If your opponent calls you on your bluff, it costs you 2 life. And again, like we discussed earlier, your left is not a crucial part of this matchup. So,
right.
But, Attica ways to follow up, representing Spellcaller here. Be interesting to see if John opens himself up to it or just decides to pass. And he's just going to pass. It looks like we have a Rattle Chains instead, which is one of the nice things about this deck as opposed to some of the Spellcaller decks is you have a lot of other things with Flash. So when you represent Spellcaller in other decks, sometimes you just have to cast it when they play around it because you need to take advantage of the tempo. In this deck, you have other things with Flash to play. So Fountain coming in, tap for Ian, putting him to 18, in for 2 with the Rattle Chains, putting John to 14. But Rattle Chains is also one of the scarier spirits. It allows you to do some things that you normally wouldn't be able to do, like flashing in Mausoleum Wanderer in response to things.
Yes.
And such. Looks like everyone Clarion. I hope you chose both modes. And there comes a Spellcaller to exile that, and John's going to play a Triumph for turn. Looks like a Savai Triumph.
And that just shows you how important a card like Rattle Chains is, that John was willing to spend a 3-mana, 3-damage sweeper on one card.
Yeah, probably one of his better cards in the whole matchup, to be honest.
Right, right.
Here comes the Supreme Phantom in the main phase, and we're going to get in for 6. John's down to 8, and yeah. This would be another nice board to have a Clarion for, but obviously John felt pressure into casting it last turn. Either that means he has another sweeper, or he really thought it was that important to get the rattle chains off the board.
Mhm.
But this is a nice spot for Ian. I mean, if he has permission here, I think it's going to be that's curtains. I don't know how John's going to have time to get back in this game. He's on a 2-turn clock, and there's another Lord. That's it. No land drop either.
Yeah.
All spells.
Looks like John might be
And
in a
step,
tough
we're going to
spot.
flash in a Shacklegeist. I'm not sure I like this. I think I would have gone tapped. It does put lethal on the board, but now
Mhm.
John has a window to resolve all. Oh, you have 1 mana on tap still. Sorry. My apologies.
Oh, but even if Ian's got a Geistlight Snare, there's no enchantment in play.
Ooh, and this is really brutal because there's a Leyline Binding on the Spell Queller to cast the Deafening Clarion in the end step after the Shacklegeist resolves. And even though additional toughness point from the Supreme Phantom wouldn't matter on any of them because the Phantom is going to die to it. So all of the creatures are gone. Ian passes the turn, and maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe the plan was the Spell Queller is going to come down and trap my Clarion, and then I'll just kill the Spell Queller later.
Mm-hmm.
So, and no flash threat at the end of the turn for Ian. The good news is John still doesn't have his 5th land for now, so nothing too powerful is going to happen. And even when he does, presumably Ian could still have some interaction.
I do think you're correct that the John intentionally set up casting Deafening Clarion into his opponent's Spell Queller to then set this line up where eventually Ian taps out. He's got a Rattle Chains in play. He's very incentivized to be putting creatures in play. Like you said, he put lethal in play, but then didn't have the 1 mana interaction spell. And
yeah, so John chalks in a Stomping Ground going to 6, cast an Omnath, that gets Geistlight Snared. Fair mode, 3 mana. You know, but it's good enough here. And that is the one downside of John's position. His life total is pretty low. He's getting constrained on mana. The downside for Ian is his hand is a Island Curious Obsession, and that looks like a second Omnath.
And yeah, John's hand does not look short on cards to be casting. So
that's the side when you don't have any lands. Usually means you got all spells. So we're going to shock in a Steam Vents going to 4 and then up to 8 off the Omnath trigger. Oh, that's not
looks like a
that's an Evolving Wilds. My apologies. So we're actually at 10, and we're going to fetch now and get some mana.
Man, remember how we were talking about there's only Fabled Passage in this format to facilitate your Deathrite Shaman?
Yeah, you do have Evolving Wilds and all of the 3-color ones from Streets, which are interesting. I know that some people have played lists with those with Urborg because of the synergy. Which if you are not familiar, those lands enter and they briefly are untapped while they have a trigger on the stack before you sacrifice them to get your tapped land. And if you have an Urborg in play, they are swamps, so you can fill it up black mana, so they're not tap lands if you have Urborg to play, which is kind of cool. I don't see. It looks like we just hard casted it off of the floating mana and our last land.
And so far, we're getting a Kolaghan's Command, a Wandering Mind, and a Vanishing Verse.
Yeah, and with Omnath in play, Niv in play, Ian's at 18. It looks like he might even be dead next turn, potentially. If not, it's a 2-turn clock, and we know what the hand looks like. It's not looking good. So draw step, he's going to gain 4 more life and 14. Probably just 10 for 10 and pass the turn if I had to guess. Yeah, Ian's down to 8.
And we're clearly seeing the inevitability of the Niv to Light deck here. Just, very pivotal. Answer the linear thing that my opponent is doing in the first few turns. Take over with my spells that go over the top. And
that's going to wrap it up. It looks like double Curious Obsession in the hand cell. Just a brutal sequence again.
Yeah.